Ladies and gentlemen, listen up. This is going to hit deep, but it's going to hit true. You know, one of the most profound lessons I've learned over decades of coaching people, from CEOs to athletes to everyday warriors like you, is this: human beings crave what they can't immediately have. See, relationships, whether romantic, professional, or even friendships, are built on a fundamental principle: value is created in the space between pursuit and fulfillment. Now, I'm not talking about playing games. I'm talking about understanding human psychology and how energy flows between people. The paradox of attention. The more you chase, the more they run. Why? Because desperation repels. When someone senses that you're overly invested, when they feel your happiness depends on their response, their subconscious mind says, I've already got this. There's no urgency here. But when you stop caring, when you stop overthinking every text, every call, every glance, you flip the script. Suddenly they start noticing your absence. They start wondering, wait a minute, where did that energy go? Why don't they care anymore? Energy dynamics in relationships. Imagine emotional energy as a seesaw. When one side carries all the weight, the other side rises. The same happens in relationships. When you pull back your energy, when you focus on yourself instead of obsessing over them, you restore balance. They lean in because your absence creates space for their effort. The human drive for autonomy. Let's talk about freedom. People are hardwired to resist feeling controlled. Even the slightest sense of obligation or expectation can trigger a rebellion. When you stop caring, you're not giving up, you're letting go of control. And paradoxically, that's what makes people return. Freedom creates space for genuine connection. Self-worth sets the standard. Here's the hard truth: people will treat you how you allow them to treat you. If you communicate intentionally or unintentionally that you're willing to settle for breadcrumbs, that's all you'll get. But when you prioritize your self-respect, when you communicate through your actions that your time, energy, and presence are valuable, everything changes. Self-respect isn't about arrogance, it's about clarity. It's about saying, I know my worth, and I refuse to negotiate it down. Emotional detachment is a magnet. Do you want to know what's incredibly magnetic? Independence. Confidence. The ability to say, I'm okay whether you stay or go, because my happiness doesn't depend on your presence, that energy. It's like a gravitational force. It draws people in because they can feel your strength. When you detach emotionally, you stop leaking your power. You become a person of substance, someone worth pursuing. Reclaiming your power. And here's the final piece of the puzzle: when you stop caring, you redirect your energy back to where it belongs on you. Your goals, your passions, your growth. You stop orbiting around someone else's validation, and you become the sun in your own universe. You see, it's not about manipulation, it's about alignment. When you stop caring in an unhealthy, obsessive way, you free yourself, and ironically, that's when people start to care more about you. So here's my challenge to you: stop chasing, start attracting. Stop clinging, start growing. Stop worrying about whether they care, and start focusing on whether you care about your own peace, your own progress, your own power. Because when you do that, not only does their mind change, but more importantly, yours does. Now go out there, stand tall, and own your worth. You deserve nothing less. Thank you. The paradox of attention is one of the most profound and often misunderstood dynamics in human relationships. At its core, it reveals something crucial about human psychology. The more you chase something or someone, the more it tends to elude you. Now, let me be clear. This isn't about manipulation or playing hard to get. This is about understanding the natural flow of human behavior and how people assign value to things, experiences, and yes, other people. When you invest excessive emotional energy into someone, it's not just the words you say or the actions you take, it's the energy behind them. People can feel when you're overly attached, overly anxious, or overly dependent on their response. And here's the kicker: it's not even conscious most of the time. They don't think to themselves, oh, this person is too interested, I'm going to pull away. No, it's something far more subtle, far more primal. The brain is wired to value what is scarce and to dismiss what seems abundant and guaranteed. Think about this: when you have unlimited access to something, whether it's food, water, or affection, you start to take it for granted. Not because you're ungrateful, but because your brain stops registering it as special. It becomes background noise. This happens in relationships all the time. When someone senses that your emotional well-being depends on their attention, they don't feel the need to invest any more energy into you. Why? Because their subconscious mind already believes they've secured you. Now let's flip the scenario. When you pull back, not out of spite, not to play games, but because you genuinely start focusing on your own life, your own goals, your own happiness, you create a space. And it's in that space that curiosity, desire, and value begin to grow. Suddenly, the person starts to notice your absence. They start wondering, why aren't they texting me as much? Why aren't they as available as before? Did something change? And in that moment, a crucial shift happens. The energy dynamic resets. This isn't about pretending not to care. It's about actually not over caring. It's about recognizing that your worth isn't defined by someone else's validation. The truth is, people are drawn to those who have a sense of self-assurance, independence, and a life that's full regardless of whether someone else is in it or not. I think of it this way. Imagine someone holding onto a bird too tightly. The harder they squeeze, the more the bird struggles to break free. But if they loosen their grip, if they create space, the bird might actually choose to stay. The same principle applies here. When you stop suffocating the connection with fear, anxiety, or obsession, you allow the natural flow of attraction to take its course. There's also a deeper psychological factor at play. When you overinvest in someone, when you make them the center of your emotional universe, you unintentionally send a signal, I don't believe I'm enough on my own, so I need your approval to feel whole. And here's the hard truth: people aren't attracted to neediness. They're drawn to strength. They're drawn to people who seem content, fulfilled, and purposeful, whether or not they're receiving constant validation from others. Now, this doesn't mean you should become cold, distant, or emotionally unavailable. It means you should stop making someone else the source of your emotional stability. It means you should stop running yourself ragged trying to prove your worth to someone who isn't reciprocating the same energy. The paradox of attention teaches us a powerful lesson. When you stop chasing, you give others the space to pursue. When you stop anxiously pouring your energy into someone else, you allow them to feel the weight of your absence and, more importantly, the value of your presence. This shift isn't just about them, it's about you. It's about reclaiming your power and understanding that you are worthy, whole, and valuable when else's approval. Because when you truly believe that, you naturally stop over-caring and you start attracting people who see your value without you having to prove it. So remember, this attention freely given is rarely valued. Attention earned, however, that's where real connection begins. Stop chasing, start attracting, and watch how everything changes. Energy dynamics in relationships are one of the most powerful yet overlooked aspects of human interaction. Whether it's in romantic connections, friendships, or even professional relationships, the way energy flows between two people determines the balance, the attraction, and ultimately the outcome of that relationship. Now, when I talk about energy, I'm not referring to some abstract or mystical force. I'm talking about the emotional, mental, and even physical effort you invest in someone and how that investment is perceived and reciprocated. Picture a seesaw on a playground. If one person sits down with all their weight and the other person isn't even on the other side, the balance is completely off. This is exactly what happens in relationships when one person is pouring in all their energy, constantly texting, calling, initiating plans, overthinking every interaction while the other person barely lifts a finger. The seesaw becomes stuck. One person is left carrying the full emotional load while the other is free to stay disengaged. And here's the interesting thing: the person sitting comfortably at the top often doesn't feel the need to put in more effort because they're already receiving all the attention without having to give anything in return. The more you lean into someone energetically, especially when it feels one-sided, the more they naturally lean back. Why? Because human nature instinctively values balance, and when something feels overly abundant, it loses its perceived value. Think about air. We rarely appreciate it until we're gasping for it underwater. Similarly, emotional energy given in excess without reciprocation begins to feel less meaningful, less special, and even burdensome to the receiver. Now, here's where things start to shift. When you stop pouring all your emotional energy into someone who isn't reciprocating when you pull back, not out of spite, but out of self-respect, you create a void. And it's in that void that the other person begins to feel the imbalance. They notice the silence. They notice the space. And suddenly they're left with two choices: lean in to restore the connection or let the gap widen. This isn't about manipulation. It's about restoring natural balance. You're not playing a game. You're reclaiming your emotional resources. When you focus your energy back on yourself, on your passions, your goals, your happiness, you start to radiate a different kind of energy. It's the energy of someone who isn't desperate, someone who isn't chasing, someone who isn't placing their worth in another person's hands. And let me tell you something, that energy is magnetic. People are drawn to those who seem self-contained, who exude confidence, and who don't rely on external validation to feel whole. The shift happens not because you're trying to make someone care, but because you stop trying so hard to make them care. The moment you stop overcompensating for their lack of effort, you force them to confront their own level of investment in the relationship. There's also something deeply liberating about pulling your energy back. You stop overanalyzing every text. You stop worrying about whether you're being too much. You stop carrying the emotional weight of trying to keep someone interested. Instead, you redirect that energy into yourself, into your growth, your dreams, your joy. And here's the irony: when you stop caring so much about whether someone else is investing in you, you become infinitely more attractive. This isn't just about attraction in the romantic sense, it's about respect. People respect those who have boundaries, who have self-worth, and who are willing to walk away from dynamics where their energy isn't valued. When you stop overextending yourself, you communicate a powerful message without saying a word. I value myself enough not to settle for less than I deserve. And let's be honest, energy isn't infinite. Every ounce of emotional energy you pour into someone who isn't meeting you halfway is energy you're taking away from yourself, from your goals, from the people who do value your presence. So here's the bottom line: emotional energy is currency, and it must be spent wisely. If you continue to invest in someone who isn't investing back, you'll drain yourself dry. But if you learn to pull back, to balance the seesaw, to let the other person step up and meet you halfway, you'll not only restore balance, you'll also regain your power. At the end of the day, people will only match your energy if they feel there's space to do so. If you're doing all the work, there's no room left for them to step in. So stop over-giving, stop over-investing, and let the dynamic reset itself. Because when you do, not only do you honor your own energy, but you also create the opportunity for genuine, balanced, and meaningful connection to thrive. The human drive for autonomy is one of the most fundamental forces shaping our behavior, our relationships, and our decisions. At the core of every person is an innate need to feel free, to feel like their choices are their own, their actions are voluntary, and their identity isn't being suffocated by external pressure. Whether we realize it or not, every interaction in a relationship carries subtle cues about freedom and control. And here's the truth: the moment someone feels trapped, obligated, or overly influenced, their natural instinct is to pull away. It's not always intentional, and it's not always conscious, but it happens because autonomy is wired into our psychology. Imagine a rope being pulled taut between two people. The harder one person pulls, the more tension builds on the other side. Eventually, one of two things happens: the person on the other end starts pulling back to resist the pressure, or they let go of the rope entirely. Relationships work in much the same way. When one person starts to feel like their space, choices, or independence are being threatened, no matter how well-intentioned the other person might be, their subconscious mind sounds the alarm. It says, I need to protect my sense of self. I need to create space. This happens in romantic relationships, friendships, and even professional dynamics. When someone feels like they're being monitored, when they sense expectation looming over every interaction, or when they feel like their choices are being dictated by someone else's emotional needs, the walls go up. And here's the most ironic part: often the person exerting the pressure isn't even aware they're doing it. They might just want reassurance, affection, or connection, but in their effort to hold on tighter, they accidentally create resistance. Think about a time in your life when someone gave you space to make your own choices, to act on your own terms. Didn't that freedom make you feel more comfortable, more willing to engage, more open to connecting? Now think about a time when you felt cornered, when someone was demanding answers, affection, or commitment before you were ready. That pressure didn't make you want to lean in, it made you want to escape. This is where the power of detachment comes in. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring, and it doesn't mean you shut people out. It means you stop trying to control outcomes. It means you stop clinging to the idea that someone has to respond in a specific way for you to feel secure. When you release that pressure, when you stop trying to force someone to show up the way you want them to, you give them the space to show up authentically. And here's the beautiful thing: when someone feels free, they're far more likely to lean in willingly. Autonomy is not just about physical space, it's about emotional and mental space as well. It's about allowing someone to have their own thoughts, their own feelings, and their own timeline. Too often, people confuse care with control. They think if I care about you, I need to make sure you're doing what I think is best for you, but real care isn't about control, it's about trust. It's about trusting that the other person knows how to navigate their own path, even if it doesn't look the way you imagined. When you stop hovering over someone emotionally, when you stop second-guessing their every move or trying to preemptively address their every need, you communicate something incredibly powerful. I trust you. I respect you. I'm secure enough in myself to let you have your freedom. That message, spoken or unspoken, changes everything. It creates a space where both people can breathe, where connection can happen without fear, and where affection and effort become choices, not obligations. It's also worth noting that autonomy isn't just about the other person, it's about you too. When you focus on your own autonomy, on your goals, your passions, your independence, you naturally shift the dynamic. You stop making someone else the center of your emotional universe, and you start showing up as a whole, self-sufficient person. And let me tell you something, that energy is magnetic. People are drawn to those who don't need them, but choose them. Here's the truth: relationships thrive when they're built on mutual freedom. The most fulfilling connections aren't forged in chains, they're built on trust, respect, and space. When you stop trying to micromanage how someone feels about you or how they show up for you, you create an environment where love, respect, and effort can grow naturally. At the end of the day, people want to feel like they're showing up because they want to, not because they have to. Autonomy isn't the enemy of connection, it's the foundation of it. If you want someone to lean in, if you want someone to stay, give them the freedom to do so on their own terms. Because when people have the space to choose you freely, their commitment isn't just surface level, it's deep, it's real, and it's lasting. Self-worth is the foundation upon which every relationship, every interaction, and every outcome in your life is built. It's not just a feeling, it's a standard. It's the invisible line you draw in the sand that tells people this is how I expect to be treated. This is what I will and will not tolerate. The hard truth is that people will only treat you with as much respect, love, and care as you demonstrate you believe you deserve. And this isn't just about what you say, it's about what you allow, what you tolerate, and what you reinforce with your actions. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine two people walking into a negotiation. One walks in confidently with clear terms, a firm handshake, and a belief in the value they bring to the table. The other walks in hesitant, unsure of their worth, and willing to accept whatever crumbs are thrown their way. Who do you think walks away with the better deal? It's the same in relationships. The person who knows their worth commands respect not because they demand it, but because they embody it. Now, here's where most people get stuck. They confuse self-worth with arrogance, but these are two entirely different things. Arrogance says, I'm better than you. Self-worth says, I'm enough as I am. And when you believe you're enough, truly, deeply believe it, you stop tolerating mistreatment, inconsistency, and half-hearted effort from others. You no longer feel the need to beg for someone's attention or settle for breadcrumbs of affection. Here's the interesting thing about self-worth. It's not just a mental belief, it's an energy you carry. People can feel it. When you walk into a room, when you speak, when you interact, your energy communicates your level of self-respect before you even say a word. If you carry yourself like someone who knows their value, people instinctively respond to that energy. But if you carry yourself like someone who's desperate for validation, approval, or connection, people feel that too, and it repels them. Think about it. How many times have you seen someone chase and chase and chase for someone's love or attention, only to push that person further away? Why does this happen? Because when your actions scream, I need you to validate me to feel okay. You're unknowingly communicating that you don't see your own value. And if you don't see it, why should they? Self-worth sets the standard in every relationship dynamic. If you tolerate being spoken to disrespectfully, if you accept inconsistency as normal, or if you continually make excuses for someone's poor behavior, you're teaching them a lesson whether you realize it or not. You're teaching them that you'll accept less than what you deserve. But let me tell you something powerful. When you have a strong sense of self-worth, you naturally create boundaries, not as walls to keep people out, but as guidelines to teach people how to treat you. Boundaries aren't about punishment, they're about clarity. They're about saying, I care about myself enough not to let your behavior diminish my sense of peace, joy, or self-respect. And the incredible thing is, when you set those boundaries from a place of self-assuredness rather than fear, people respect them. Sure, some might test them, and others might walk away, but let them. Because someone walking away when they can't meet your standards isn't a loss, it's a win. It means you've created space for someone who can meet you where you deserve to be met. But here's the thing, self-worth isn't something you find, it's something you build. It's something you cultivate every single day through your habits, your mindset, and your choices. You build it when you stop settling for one-sided relationships. You build it when you stop over-explaining your boundaries. You build it when you walk away from situations that make you question your value. And let me be real with you, this isn't easy. There will be moments when you'll doubt yourself, when you'll feel the pull to settle, when the fear of being alone feels heavier than the discomfort of staying in a situation that doesn't honor you. But every time you choose self-respect over temporary validation, you strengthen your foundation. The beauty of self-worth is that it doesn't just improve your relationships, it transforms your entire life. It changes the way you carry yourself, the opportunities you attract, and the people you allow into your inner circle. Because when you hold yourself to a higher standard, the universe starts to meet you there. So let this sink in every time you allow someone to treat you poorly, every time you stay silent when you should speak up, and every time you accept less than you deserve, you're sending a message not just to them, but to yourself. But the opposite is also true. Every time you walk away from disrespect, every time you communicate a boundary, and every time you honor your own needs, you're reinforcing your self-worth. You teach people how to treat you by how you treat yourself. And when you truly understand that, everything changes. The relationships you attract, the people who stay, and the love you receive will all start to reflect the love and respect you've already given to yourself. The power of emotional detachment is one of the most transformative principles you can apply in your relationships, your pure personal growth, and your overall mental health. Now, let's be clear from the start, emotional detachment doesn't mean becoming cold, heartless, or indifferent. It doesn't mean shutting yourself off from love, care, or vulnerability. Instead, it means freeing yourself from the need to control outcomes, reactions, or the way others perceive you. It means releasing the weight of expectation and learning to show up fully while remaining anchored in your own peace, regardless of what happens next. Most people tie their emotional state to external circumstances, how someone responds to their text, whether their partner seems distant or whether their boss praises their work. When you do this, you give away your power. You're saying, my happiness, my peace, and my self-worth are in your hands, and let me tell you, that's a dangerous place to live because other people are unpredictable. Their emotions are fluid, their actions are shaped by their own struggles and insecurities, and trying to control any of it is like trying to hold on to water. It slips right through your fingers. Emotional detachment is about understanding that you can't control other people, but you can control your response. You can control where you place your focus, how much energy you invest, and how you allow someone else's behavior to affect your inner world. Think of it like this, you're a boat on the ocean. The waves represent other people's emotions, reactions, and decisions. You can't stop the waves from coming, but you can learn to steady your boat. You can drop your anchor deep into your sense of self, your values, and your purpose so that no matter how turbulent the water gets, you remain centered. One of the key shifts that happens when you practice emotional detachment is that you stop being driven by fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough. These fears are the root cause of so many toxic behaviors in relationships. When you're afraid, you cling, you overthink. You overextend yourself trying to prevent an outcome you can't control. But when you detach, you release the illusion of control and step into a place of trust in yourself, trust in your worth, and trust in the natural flow of life. Now, does this mean you stop caring about people? Absolutely not. It means you care from a place of abundance, not scarcity. You give love freely, but you don't need someone to love you back in a specific way to feel whole. You express your feelings openly, but you're not shattered if they're not reciprocated. You set boundaries with confidence because your peace is non-negotiable. Detachment also brings clarity. When you're not clouded by anxiety, overthinking, or trying to micromanage someone else's behavior, you see things for what they really are. You stop making excuses for red flags. You stop holding on to false hope. You stop investing energy into people who have already shown you they can't meet you at your level. Emotional detachment allows you to step back, observe, and make decisions from a place of wisdom rather than desperation. Think about how much lighter your life would feel if you weren't constantly trying to decode someone's mixed signals, if you weren't replaying conversations in your head, or if you weren't clinging to every interaction as if your happiness depended on it. That's the gift of detachment. It liberates you. It gives you back your emotional freedom. And here's the irony. The more detached you are from outcomes, the more naturally things tend to fall into place. Why? Because when you're not pushing, pulling, or trying to force something to happen, you allow space for things to unfold organically. Detachment doesn't mean you stop showing up. It means you stop forcing outcomes. You can still express love, care deeply, and invest in people, but you do it with an open hand, not a clenched fist. And let me tell you something, people can feel the difference. They can feel when your energy comes from a place of calm confidence rather than anxious attachment. And that energy is incredibly attractive. When you detach emotionally, you reclaim your power. You start making decisions based on what aligns with your values, not based on fear of losing someone. You start prioritizing your peace over temporary validation. And most importantly, you start to realize that no relationship, no person, and no external outcome can fill the spaces within you that only self-awareness and self-love can fill. At the end of the day, emotional detachment is an act of self-respect. It's saying, I deserve to feel peace, and I'm not going to let someone else's behavior rob me of that. It's about showing up fully, giving your best, and then letting go of the need to control what happens next. Because here's the truth, you can't force someone to care, you can't force someone to stay, and you can't force someone to show up for you, but you can show up for yourself. When you master emotional detachment, you become unshakable. You stop being tossed around by other people's moods and decisions, and you start living from a place of deep, unyielding inner peace. And when you operate from that space, the right people, the people who value, respect, and cherish you will naturally gravitate towards you. Not because you chased them, but because your energy drew them in. That's the power of detachment. It's not about not caring, it's about caring without losing yourself in the process. One of the most profound dynamics in human relationships is the shift in energy that happens when you stop chasing, when you stop overgiving, and when you stop trying to convince someone of your worth. It's almost paradoxical when you pull back, when you refocus on yourself, and when you stop pouring all your energy into trying to win someone over, they often lean in. Why? Because human nature is wired to value what feels scarce, what feels intentional, and what feels earned. But when you stop overextending yourself, you create space for someone else to step up, to invest, and to meet you halfway. Now let's break this down. Every relationship operates on an invisible scale of perceived value and energy exchange. When one person is constantly chasing, over-initiating, and over-investing, the scale tips. The person on the receiving end starts to feel less inclined to reciprocate because they don't have to. The effort is already being given freely. But when you stop, when you step back and reclaim your focus, the balance begins to reset. Suddenly, the other person feels the space. They notice the absence of your energy, your attention, your consistent presence, and that absence creates awareness. But here's the key, this shift isn't about playing games. It's not about manipulation or trying to trigger a reaction. It's about genuinely redirecting your energy back to yourself. It's about recognizing your own value, your own goals, and your own purpose, and pouring your focus into those areas instead of into someone who isn't showing up for you in the way you deserve. When you stop caring so intensely about someone else's validation, when you stop living in a state of emotional dependence on their actions, you start showing up differently. Your energy changes. You become less reactive, less needy, and less emotionally volatile. And here's the truth, people are drawn to individuals who are secure, self-sufficient, and grounded in their own identity. It's magnetic. There's also a psychological principle at play here, what's often referred to as the law of scarcity. When something feels abundant, easy to access, or overly available, it naturally loses its perceived value. But when something feels rare, when it feels intentional and not guaranteed, its value skyrockets. This isn't about playing hard to get. It's about becoming genuinely content with your own life, with your own company, and with your own growth. When someone realizes that your world doesn't revolve around them, it forces them to ask themselves a powerful question. Why isn't this person chasing me anymore? Why isn't their attention fixated on me like it used to be? And that question often triggers introspection. It makes them reassess their behavior, their priorities, and whether they've taken you for granted. But the most important part of this shift isn't what happens with the other person, it's what happens within you. When you stop over-investing in someone who isn't matching your effort, you start reclaiming your time, your energy, and your emotional bandwidth. You start focusing on your goals, your passions, your health, and your peace. You become the main character in your own story again, instead of being a supporting role in someone else's. And let me tell you, when you operate from that space, when your energy is no longer desperate or clingy, but calm, confident, and self-assured, it changes the way people see you. You're no longer someone who can be taken for granted because you've made it clear, both in your actions and in your energy, that you're not afraid to walk away from situations that don't align with your value. This isn't about punishing someone for their lack of effort. It's about honoring yourself. It's about understanding that you deserve mutual respect, mutual investment, and mutual effort. And if someone isn't willing or able to meet you at that level, then your energy is better spent elsewhere. The beautiful thing about this shift is that it also filters out the wrong people. When you stop chasing the ones who are only sticking around because of convenience, because of what you provided, or because they enjoyed the validation you gave them, they'll drift away. But the ones who genuinely care, who genuinely value you, they'll notice your absence and they'll show up. They'll lean in. And if they don't, well, that's your answer. Because someone who truly values you will never be indifferent to your absence. At the end of the day, the energy shift that happens when you stop caring so intensely isn't about trying to trigger someone else into action. It's about taking control of your own narrative. It's about stepping back, refocusing on your purpose, and letting go of the need to control someone else's actions or feelings. You have to remember you are the prize. You are the asset. And when you start treating yourself that way, the world starts responding accordingly. Whether the person leans in or walks away, you win either way because you've chosen you. And that's the most powerful shift of all. At the core of every healthy relationship, whether romantic, professional, or personal, lies a fundamental truth. You teach people how to treat you by how you treat yourself. When you stop chasing validation, when you set boundaries rooted in self-respect, and when you redirect your energy back to your own growth, everything changes. This isn't about playing games, manipulating outcomes, or trying to force someone to see your value. It's about becoming so deeply anchored in your self-worth that you no longer depend on anyone else to validate it. When you stop caring in that anxious, over-invested way and instead care from a place of abundance and confidence, you naturally shift the dynamic. People notice, they feel the difference. And more importantly, you feel the difference. You reclaim your peace, your focus, and your sense of purpose. You realize that your worth was never something someone else had the power to define. It's something you own, something you cultivate, and something you protect. And here's the most powerful lesson. Whether someone steps up to meet your energy or walks away, you win. You win because your self-respect remains intact. You win because your peace is no longer held hostage by someone else's actions. You win because you've learned the art of letting go while staying deeply connected to your own value. So remember this: the moment you stop chasing, the moment you stop over-explaining, and the moment you stop tying your happiness to someone else's validation, you take your power back. And when you operate from that space of inner strength and clarity, the right people will naturally gravitate towards you, not because you beg for their attention, but because your energy demands respect. In the end, it's not about whether someone else changes, it's about whether you change, whether you decide to honor your worth, protect your peace, and invest in yourself first. Because when you do that, everything and everyone that aligns with your true value will fall into place.